Hello and welcome to Question and Answer Time. I'm Michael Sidgwick, joined by fellow Dadley boy Michael Hamflett to do precisely that. But before we get into it, if you're a fan of this sort of thing, make sure to subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, hopefully Spotify, and YouTube for daily wrestling podcasts where we preview and review Raw, SmackDown, the show formerly known as NXT 2.0. Dynamite, Collision, pay-per-views, premium live events, question and answer time. We host roundtable discussions on occasion and wrestler interviews, and we host a roundup of the week complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, on wrestle culture. Hamflett, how we doing?
All right. It's Friday, isn't it? That's what people have to say. Not for me.
Monday's your dream day.
I like being in work. We're very, very privileged to be sat here.
Any weekend plans?
Loads. Going to 2 gigs, Sidge. 2 gigs. Sadly missing out.
Another 2?
Yeah. Sadly missing out on a trip to the in-laws for an in-law family birthday because Basement Jack's got booked first. And, first is first.
That's what everyone says.
That's what everyone says.
First is first.
That's not what everyone's going to be saying at this party. I'm going to miss that again. My name is going to be Mud down there.
Indeed.
I'll tell you.
Indeed.
I'm not going to care.
I've got a family gathering, but I'm quite looking forward to it.
Oh, where are you going? What are you doing?
It's the brother-in-law.
It's like, I've got the questions, so you got the bloody answers.
Yeah. It's the brother-in-law's fiance's birthday. So just kids around the garden. Not too many, but a couple of brewskis, some food, and then, kids got a big football weekend, so it's all happening.
Very wholesome.
Yeah. On the subject of first is first, let's get to our first question.
Oh, that's
this
a segue
comes
and a half. That is
from
good.
Critteron. I don't know what either of those mean, but thank you for your question nonetheless. And indeed, thank you for everyone for submitting your questions. Usual crack applies. We get a lot of engagement on X/Twitter. We really, really appreciate it. We simply don't have time to go through them all the time. So we try and sort of catalog them here. If you're interested in joining in future editions, make sure to follow us on X at M. Sidgwick, at Michael Hamflett, at WhatCulture WWE.
I have a question relating to that I will share later on.
Okay.
From one of our seasoned contributors who no longer uses X.
Okay.
Throw that into the conversation.
Okay.
The old conversational mixer later on.
Okay. Well, back to Critteron. What is your dream wrestler stipulation combo? For example, Kevin Owens in an Anarchy in the Arena match for me. I mean, that would be absolutely unbelievable. Or Dominic Mysterio in that match type even. Now, funnily enough, my mind often goes back to Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson, who, if you're going to check out the news, we've aggregated, might be returning to AEW in an in-ring capacity. Certainly there's no guarantees. The back bump at Grand Slam Mexico off TV has reignited that conversation. But so Kenny Omega, the crack was when he was really bursting through into that main heavyweight bracket in New Japan Pro Wrestling in 2016, was meant to work a ladder match against Hiroshi Tanahashi. That match was postponed or outright cancelled, and he had to work Michael Elgin instead. And I remember it being fine for what it was, given the opponent. It's not something I'm ever inclined to revisit. And it's one of those where I would quite happily go, I'm talking 2 full years at least without watching a single ladder match in any context whatsoever. However, I need to see what Kenny, because it was kind of like a hasty last minute-ish replacement with that much storyline build. And just imagine Tanahashi, that version, and that version of Kenny with a ladder to play with, I would like to see Kenny and Danielson, neither of whom have had this really prominent ladder match, just to see how their minds would engage with that, if they wouldn't rely on the same tropes and that very obvious assembly. I just think maybe even versus each other, why the hell not? I'd love to see how Danielson would approach a ladder match. You ever see the Fight Without Honor against Morishima?
Yes.
It's basically just like the chain in it.
Yeah.
He doesn't really do anything else because he has this minimalist approach. I would love to see how Danielson, who's done multi-man ladder matches, WrestleMania 31 springs to mind, he's never had a really famous one-on-one ladder match.
No, it makes me wonder if they'd try a sort of a ladder match for, that weird curio where It's a like very well remembered match, but it was only after the fact that a few people did some noticing, and then the wrestlers confirmed it. Cena and AJ set that little bet with themselves that they wouldn't go to the floor. Royal Rumble 2017.
Yeah.
Feels like Kenny and Brian would come up with a ladder version of that.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's used, where it's used, or something. And you wouldn't necessarily care in the moment, and then after the fact, they'd be like, "Oh, we did this thing. We just wondered if anybody would pick it up."
Yeah.
Well, like we'd only have the ladder upside down until one of us was climbing it. Oh, so they bloody did.
Yeah.
And you just be like, that's incredible. How have they thought of that, you know? The Brett and Shawn we talked about the other week, the original ladder match.
Yes.
And how it feels.
Well, the original WWF ladder match.
The original WWF ladder match.
Ladder match.
Ladder match. Shawn took that and claimed credit for himself. We were leaning single ladders up against rails before somebody thought about using your step one, Brett.
Wait there, good buddy.
It's time to play the game! Time to play the game! Ha 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 ha!
Right, okay, you'll obviously remember, this isn't the question, that Shawn took Brett's idea for the ladder match finish for WrestleMania 10.
Yeah.
Crotched on the ropes, etc., etc. Can you remember the specific turn of phrase Brett uses in his book when he's thinking of Shawn and he sees the finish? Like, he doesn't obviously say it to Shawn.
Oh, God.
Like, it's a bit of a Cold War at this point. Not even at this point. They're starting to be, like, they've never been the closest of road buddy, best mates, all the rest of it. But Brett's starting to go,
They were better together when there was someone like a Hogan as a common enemy.
Yes.
Once that disappeared and they were...
Yeah. So he starts... This is the first time, I think, in the entire book, he's like, I don't think I like you, Shawn Michaels. And it's because, you know, he borrows the finish because Brett had said, just don't use that finish.
Yeah.
Shawn uses the finish. Brett is obviously annoyed to say what?
Oh, it's like... Brett's got such a lovely way around a borrowed and then slightly bastardized old man phrase that he's probably heard his dad say. The kind of stuff that the cowboys and the truckers say.
Do you want a clue?
Yeah, go on then. I had something I was going to say. I don't think it's quite right.
You say it.
I was going to say something like low down, lousy yellow dog or something like that.
No. I'll give you a clue. It doesn't necessarily sound like Canadian or American, and that might be because he's spent a lot of time in his formative years, in his early career.
Right, I'm not going to get
Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid.
I'm not going to get it, but it's like Robin Bugger or something like that.
You are so unbelievably close.
From Dynamite or something like that.
Yeah, I think he's got this turn of phrase from Dynamite or Davey. You thieving bastard.
That's lovely, that. Thieving bastard.
They use that in Britain, obviously. Do they let us know on X or in the comments on YouTube if they use "you thieving bastard" in the States?
I was enjoying some.
There's only two countries we know this.
I'd say all two. 2.5 if you count Canada. Still 2.5 if you count Scotland. I was reading some old Brett from '97 when he did his Calgary Sun column, and he was talking about the ECW invasion on Raw. He didn't like it as a shoot. Did not like it. Didn't really get it. I
mean, it was so close to a WrestleMania that he'd already been relegated in.
Yeah, he was probably in a bit of a bad place with it. But he was specifically noting, he's always right, isn't he? And he's obviously very prescient and stuff. But he was noting that, they come onto Raw and they have to tone down a style in order to fit in roughly in line with WWE. And you would think, this is Brett, so you would think that the supposed hardcore Paul E. Heyman, I think he called him probably, cult fans would hate it because they're here on WWF. And then it goes to the fans in the crowd and they're smiling and waving at the camera, watching the weak-ass version of their product. And it's like, that's such a future-proof take if you think about like WWE working with like the UK wrestlers in 2016, 2017 and giving you this like diet version of Progress or this recent lucha thing, isn't it? Like it's just the same pattern happening over again. Sure, like that's Brett going like, so which is it? Like, you like getting your Raw exposure all of a sudden and your barely legal pay-per-view tapes, but then you're not hardcore.
Yeah.
So which is it?
Which is it?
Just plucking at the hypocrisy of that I thought was great. I got two answers to this.
Okay.
One is Kenny Omega on Monday Night Raw. No. One is because she's never had one and would quite like to see it. Mercedes Moné in Blood and Guts / Sasha Banks in War Games. Because I hate
You
those
trust
matches.
AEW to get it right with their Women in Plunder
This is
legacy.
it. I want a women's one anyway. But I hate those matches. And I would love to see, with a second playground, with a cage on the top, if she could, like Io Sky, occasionally, flashes, moments. Candice LeRae, moments where they actually make use of the space in a way that makes you feel alive and makes you, remind you that it's war, remind you that it's supposed to be pretty brutal and weird and risky and that. And I just would like to see her turn that little switch that she's got where she goes from wacky to dangerous. And I think War Games would be like a nice place for that.
Yeah.
And the other one I had was...
And sorry, just step on your dick momentarily. The Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch Hell in a Cell match proved that she's got the creativity to do it, because that was really, really well done.
Use the space. Yeah. The other one, so we've probably talked about this before when it comes up, but I wouldn't normally be something. I don't like barbed wire matches. It's one of my least favorite stipulations. It goes partly because of the sort of, it goes against why like a table or a chair works. Like lots of potential damage, very little in the way of noise or like.
Let's put some bombs on there.
Hasn't helped for me.
Not even, did not have an FM dub phase where you
a little bit, but
yeah.
It's kind of tied in with an ECW one though.
Yeah.
However, I would like to see Will Ospreay in a no rope barbed wire match.
Exploding.
No, doesn't need to explode.
It's got to explode.
No, you can have explosions if you want. You like it. We'll have them for you. We'll stick them there for you. No ropes is the point I'm getting at. Such. Will Ospreay with no ropes and danger all around him when he's a wrestler that A, loves the ropes and B, does not fear danger.
Yeah.
What's that look like?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's like, putting him in a situation where I have no doubt he would nail it, but how? Because he's not somebody that you associate with Plunder. The only one I can think of is that bizarre, not good Japanese War Games one night cage around the ring thing they did in
wrestling
Huge.
has this obsession with doing 1 hour plus
God, it went on
war game style matches that I don't think anyone really has thought match of the year.
One of the last things he did as a New Japan full-timer, wasn't it? Yeah. Didn't like it.
No.
But there's space for Will Ospreay singles Plunder match.
Yeah.
That is like way over the top. Yes, he's used weapons, but I'm talking like way over the top.
I think that's a great idea, and it's an extension of, like, we love Will Ospreay on this podcast. He's obviously every bit as great as lots and lots of pro wrestling fans believe. But every now and then I would like to say, take 5% off. Give yourself 5 minutes less, a little bit less to do. See what you can do with a true less is more. So I do love that take. And on a similar topic, I guess, I've got one more for this as well before we move on. I would like to see Will Ospreay in an Iron Man match. We know he can do an hour. Maybe it would... There is a surplus, an excess of near falls in his matches. Like, there are certain times when I know it's not the finish. I know. I think if he can basically just import his entire style, but within the context of you kind of have to lay on your back for 3 seconds more than you normally would, I think that could be truly, truly exciting. One more on this before we move on, which might surprise you. I'm not necessarily saying he should jump.
Okay.
I am saying, and I've petitioned for this for a long time, that AEW should just simply give up the ghost of their weirdly flawed steel cage and just do Hell in a Cell. Just do AEW steel cage just basically means Hell in a Cell. Change it. Kenny Omega in Hell in a Cell. Like, what would he do with that space? Like the V-trigger missed knee straight into the mesh. Like, you can't escape. You can move the ring steps. You can't escape. Then doing the moonsault off the mesh. Just like, what would that look like? Maybe I would want to see the pure novelty of Omega doing a WWE Hell in a Cell match. I'd never, ever, ever, ever want him to go to the Fed, ever. And I know you disagree vehemently, but I just want to see him in that match. Just what would his mind make of it?
This would never happen. Maybe it would happen. Maybe if he was wrestling Shane McMahon in one, because Shane would insist upon it. But the closest comparison I can think of is Stadium Stampede. There was really something to him taking like a flight mid One Wing Danger with Sami, like off the cell through the
yeah.
like that extra moment where they're in the air. He's like pulling him down, and it would be Shane McMahon.
Yeah.
Taking the match. He's got better V-trigger, if anything, now, apparently. Yeah, One-Winged Angel off the cell through the table for the big finish.
Yeah.
Oh, he's dead. He's dead forever.
Yeah.
Like, Kenny'd want that, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
He'd want the video game ending, or through the middle of the roof.
Oh, my
in
God.
the old video game where you do the finisher through the middle and you drop into the ring.
Then gimmick it so you do the No Way Out 2000.
Ring just buckles underneath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why the hell not? And the next question comes from Carmen Mr. Jones. Mr. Jeans. Howdy, gents. Based on the history of the characters and the location of their upcoming match, do you think Mox and Hangman at All In should be Texas Death or not? For me, not. One, it was incredible, but we've already done it. Yes, I understand the Texas element. But my rule of thumb is, and I believe it's a promotional rule of thumb, and if it's not, it kind of should be. If the match is big enough to stand on its own 2 feet, do not add any extra window dressing to it. Like, this is one of those rare matches that feels enormous, like it could decide the very fate of the company. If you've got a story or a character, and yes, I understand with Jon Moxley, a lot of it is a desperation to get the belt off him because no one wants to see him anymore, as opposed to stunningly effective fictional heel work. But nonetheless, kind of same difference at this point. People are desperate to see the goodie beat the baddie at All In Texas. That is the platonic ideal of a professional wrestling match, almost. I'm not saying the build has been amazing or the ends necessarily justify the means, but we are where we are with it. Don't add anything to detract from it. If you've built a straight-up singles match that fans are willing to invest in emotionally and financially, you simply do that. You can always, if you can convince Mox to do a second job, if in fact he is losing, you can always do Texas Death 2 after the fact. But for me, and this is a broad take, if you've got the beautiful purity of a one-on-one singles match that people want to see as the main event, you've got to stick with that.
Yeah, it's not good fortune when it's good booking, but sometimes it's fortuitous to have that. Just the singles match. Absolutely not a single letter of text on the poster or anything else that needs to dress it up anymore.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that's like Mr. Dreams, neat rather than like good or necessary. Like, it is the Texas Death element of it. Makes sense for a number of different reasons, and there's lore and callbacks, and wrestling's fun for stuff like that. On a personal note, I don't think I need a Texas Death match right now. I think the form peaked with Swerve and Hangman. And even then, matches like that, matches that are Texas Death / very similar to it, are so commonplace in AEW anyway. I actually think you dilute what this particular match is about.
Yeah.
Like, Hangman and Mox have gone to war in a Texas Death match. So have Hangman and Swerve and all of that. Hangman beating him in the ring for the belt is way more what this is all about than making him scream with a chain around his neck or bloodying him up or whatever it is. 1, 2, 3 with a buckshot, or however he beats Jon Moxley in as clean as possible terms, is sort of what this is, more than the violence.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely. The whole story really, again, it's a bit meta, but the whole story is those delinquent Death Riders are cheating and interfering, and you can't get rid of them, and we want AEW to be reimagined, this fabled feeling of like where the best wrestle, and the guy, Hangman Page in this instance, has to wrestle him purely and fairly to win the belt with a definitive clean finish. I think, the Avengers moment scares me a little bit, and that could inform the match without really directly shaping the finish. But I think to honor the story that they've told, not that you can really say it's been amazing, but you've got to pay it off. Hangman Page, who is the best wrestler, where the best wrestler has to wrestle him to a permanent end. Yeah, is a character. The next one comes from Leo. Do you think Kyle Fletcher has cooled off since Revolution? It certainly feels like he's not as big of a star as he was around then, but it's quick to get it back. Hopefully a long-term feud with Takeshita over the Unified Championship next year will be peak cinema. There is a sense that he's cooled off. Put it this way, I was saying basically after World's End, and certainly Revolution, like, it is promotional malpractice, and it really undermines the idea of AEW as this meritocracy if Fletcher isn't on that pay-per-view lineup in that key, like, rarefied air of a single spot. And now it no longer feels like he has to wrestle it All In. At the start of this year, January, February, March, April, I'm thinking, my God, if this guy isn't at All In, it's a disgrace.
Yeah.
Because he's just earned it. He's worked so hard. He's got so over. His work is so incredible. And now I'm thinking, and that's nothing reflective of his work, just how he's been positioned. And this is how things happen, you know. If a promoter loses, I don't think they've lost interest, AEW, but if they've lost a bit of interest, you start to, in turn, lose a bit of interest and stop campaigning to see them. So I think there's some truth to that question. I also think, actually, that he's going to win the TNT title at All In. I know it doesn't mean much, but maybe he can prove his star power and elevate the title back to where it was about 4 years ago. But no, it is noticeable and disappointing, I think.
I think that, I mean, yes, is the answer to the question. Yes, he has cooled off a little bit. But I do have to say, if you look at All In as a card currently, and there's going to be more added to it, so it's quite a privilege to look at it while it's such a small card. And I'm even counting a match that isn't booked yet, but something like Ospreay and Swerve versus the Young Bucks, you can assume is going to be on it. Kyle Fletcher was one of the people benefiting from a period where AEW was, and it still is now, trying to sort of rebuild creatively, and it's doing it successfully. But I think at that point he was really on the rise when you weren't sure if all of it was going to take. It was like you were still at the point, still in the zones, as you coined, where like, well, what's good about this zone? What's good about that zone? The zones hadn't yet kind of evolved or started like finally getting mashed back together. So you were like, well, the Kyle Fletcher zone's great because Kyle Fletcher's doing, like, he's winning in it, and that's all that matters. And I would say there was a few zones at the time. So you had, let's say, the Daniel Garcia zone was probably still a zone for a bit. Kyle Fletcher was a zone. There's other pushes that I can't think of at this very moment. But the point I'm trying to make is all these efforts to establish these new people got people excited, got fans excited, yourself included, I would say, that, you're not just shoring up your mid-card with new talent to get excited about down the line. You're basically creating main eventers right now.
I thought Kyle Fletcher should, and I still think he should win the world title within 365 days.
If you look at All In, the top matches, the three that are announced, none of them are project wrestlers. None of them. Yeah. Star versus star, star versus star, star versus star. Huge. You've talked about how you need to kind of create the WrestleMania, cultivate that WrestleMania idea for next year's show and the year after and the year after, year after. It's not. What's been, I think, a big part of AEW's success is sort of remembering that and really looking at, well, who's big right now? Yes, we have done the work and we should be rewarded for a healthy mid-card. Quantity more than quality, I would say, if I'm honest. But, like, the stars are ready to go All In. Massive matches, ticket sellers. Kyle Fletcher has cooled, but he now exists as the best of the rest. Yeah. And what happens in WWE after WrestleMania? You start looking a little bit further down to see who's going to emerge out of that rest. Kyle Fletcher will. Daniel Garcia might. And there are others, you know? Like, I think that's, I don't know if that's been a strategic thing or whatever, but if you look on that AEW roster, I've had a bit of a complaint lately. I don't care about many AEW wrestlers. But I would say the point of someone like Kyle Fletcher right now is to be the first one you look at when Hangman Page is world champion.
Yeah.
And that's a good spot to be in. It's just not hot, but if you were going to, like, better him than, like, Lance Archer as the Kane figure of Hangman Page winning the belt. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a few of them.
If you had Hangman versus Fletcher at Full Gear, you can reheat Fletcher, as you mentioned, post All In.
Definitely. Because he's already...
one of those where it's like the most amazing Kane there's ever been. Yeah. And he loses, but part of getting over, I mean, this exact same thing happened to Hangman Page, is where you have this really close heartbreak and loss in the main event of a pay-per-view. It doesn't really feel like a loss. It's, all right, okay, well, you can bank on this guy to do it next time because he's delivered in that spot. So, yeah, put the TNT nowhere near him. I know I've just said he might elevate it, but it would feel like a thank you, a consolation at this point. You got over so you can have the rubbish belt that we don't necessarily care about.
It's happened to Garcia.
Indeed. Yeah, I'd much rather Fletcher be the Kane than the TNT champion, which tells you how far the TNT title has fallen. The next question comes from Non-Essential X.
Nice.
What's a story trope that you think is underutilized in wrestling and could work if used today? Now, I was thinking about this question quite deeply, and I didn't necessarily have an answer from the days of yore, because the problem with pro wrestling for me is that it just regurgitates itself. I can't remember the last time I saw like a brawl where the wrestler has a match, wins, their rival interferes, and they brawl, or the stables brawl. It's just white noise to me. It's white noise to me. A lot of episodic pro wrestling storytelling is in fact white noise to me. So I started thinking about...
If you're doing that terrible AI content where we asked AI to book a show, it would do
that.
Those little segments. It knows.
Yeah.
The robots know that that's what
exactly
farted out.
Yeah, exactly. So I was thinking, right, well, AEW said sports-centric, sports-oriented alternative, and it never really came to pass. You could argue, and I have, that it did, but not in the way that it was this pure, completely radically different thing to anything that had come before. And I had two ideas on this, one of which was, and they kind of flirted with this when Josh Alexander came, wild card, debut, lost. That very same match, Callis was like, join the family, mate.
Yeah.
So I didn't hate the idea, but I think realistically, and they've done nothing with Josh Alexander, and that's a different story. You could tell that story. Again, it's a sporting story, and you can use pro wrestling dynamics to make it a little bit more pro wrestling. Like, I'm a big football fan. Soccer, as it's known in the second country. And if you look right at the list of we do some football quizzes in the office, and it's like, name the 15 England players with the least amount of caps, and it gets your brain whirring, and you think of the most obscure England names, and it's a fun little bonding exercise, right? We also did one on every player to have smashed the transfer record, because in UK, if you're not aware, we don't have like your drafts or anything.
No
like
trades. Well, you get trades, but it's not like a par for the course thing.
No, it's very rare. Every time you
money.
see like, oh, there's a player plus cash offer, why do you still make that up? That so rarely happens, ever. Oh, we'll give you, this player plus 20 million if we can have your player. It's like, how often does that happen?
Not often anymore.
Anyway, so clubs pay to get the contract of another player, a transfer fee to another club, and they're wildly, wildly exorbitant. What if, and like so many of them are flopped, we go through those names, and I don't know if it's the price tag or the pressure, or they're just not a fit for their new club or whatever, but like there's so many of the players who have smashed that British transfer record fee just haven't played well at all. What if a wrestler comes in, jumps, bear with me, I know you hate it, I'm bored of it too, and the storyline is they haven't lived up to the billing. They haven't lived up to the price tag. And what if it's someone who comes in as a babyface, but the idea is there's a sporting element of, I can't handle the pressure. This is where the best wrestle. Maybe I'm not that good. And they deliberately push them in a way that they aren't pushed. Wherein, he came in full of fire, full of motivation, ready for the next chapter of his career. And they've lost like 3 on the spin.
Yeah.
Just the idea of a flop, I think, could be genuinely quite interesting. And you work that with the dynamic of that's why they then turn heel. But not like, they have a run and they beat friggin' Brian Cage on Collision. It's not working out, then you turn heel. Like, work the story, be brave enough to tell it from the start. And it's got the sporting element, because it must happen in every single sport where you get this big trade, you've got the big name player coming to your franchise, and they're a bit rubbish. It's a story people could relate to. It's a new and interesting way of going about it. I had a second one along similar lines as well, but I'll try and remember it while you give your answer.
I want an old one done, because it's been a while. I want, and don't just think it's because I'm trying to avoid wrestling, I want a well-done babyface romance storyline, because it's not as simple as, it's just Hamflett wants some fed slop. Like, the love that 2 characters share for one another, so I've said it a million times, it's a character trait rather than a gimmick, and it works wonders And it can work wonders, short and long term. Like, obviously, the best example is Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, right? Yeah. And how that spread across multiple storylines and drew in multiple different eras and in multiple different ways. So that's super. That's like the ultimate example. But on a smaller level, in a far inferior WWE, by the way, vastly inferior WWE, things like Spike Dudley and Molly Holly as this weird attitude of Romeo and Juliet from Warring Families, the Hollys and the Dudleys. Otis and Mandy Rose as an odd couple that got like
who and the Dudleys, sorry?
The Hollys and the Dudleys. Like the fighting cousins and the brothers and that. Mandy Rose and Otis got Dolph Ziggler his WrestleMania singles match. Yeah. He waited 20 years for one of them things, and he got one as part of this guy, this jock idiot that was stood in the way of true love, unlikely looking true love, that was, ultimately played for laughs. But like, we joked a long time about the NXT, it's never going to happen. Sorry, Wilborn, if you're listening, between Fallon Henley and Brooks Jensen. But the run-up, when they just stole the TV, will they, won't they, finishing each other's sentences, maybe you were there the whole time thing, there is an element of that where that episodic churn, it's never done.
Never done.
You kind of, that drops a little hook for you.
No off-season.
It drops a hook for you, right? And it doesn't need to be in your face all the time, but the link between two characters where over a course of a period of time you've learned to really care about their bond does actually bring you back for more and does play into big matches, of which, again, there's evidence of this working. Weddings draw. There are several reasons why wrestling weddings draw, and it's not just because something wacky's going to happen. People quite like that, to use your word, relatable element of life writ large on a daft wrestling stage. Yeah. I just want it done well, and I want it done between baby faces. Liv and Dom was an unqualified success for everybody involved, but it was a heel-leaning thing for the benefit of all three of them. Rhea Ripley was her full transition to babyface away from the Judgment Day. Like, let's have some goodies. Find love. And you get a root for them both. And, like, they're both babyface at the same time. And you're like, come on, you crazy kids.
Get together.
Yeah, because that would make your nice lives even nicer. Yeah. I like it. I like a bit of it in wrestling.
There was a small-scale controversy on X overnight where a certain account, AEW leaning, sort of dropped WhatCulture Wrestling forever.
Oh, that guy, yeah.
Decided to just turn his or their back on us because Hamflett on the Grand Slam Mexico review compared the thrill, not the wrestlers, the thrill of Mystico's entrance with Jey Uso's entrance, okay? Entrances, okay? So I know what you're thinking. Dr. Fed wants his sports entertainment slop all over AEW.
It's time to play the game! Time to play the game! Ha 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 ha!
Which AEW wrestler shares your opinion and wants to see a romance storyline done well in pro wrestling?
Not Kenny Omega.
Nope.
But I bet he
would. I think he might have agreed with this person.
A wrestling romance storyline done well.
Who wants to see, just before you think, Hamflett wants his sports entertainment slop all over AEW, which AEW wrestler wants to see this and see it done well?
Hanger?
Nope. I mean, might, but that's not the person I distinctly remember listening.
I'd never heard whoever this is.
I distinctly remember listening to the podcast.
Right, I'm going to go in opposite direction then to wrestlers you think it might be and go the other way and just say John Moxley.
No, but I would say you're closer considering the type of output this wrestler does. You wouldn't think it.
One more guess then. Joe.
Nah. Swerve Strickland.
I totally get that, yeah.
Yep, Swerve wants to see it done, so you're not alone, and do not jump down his throat. The ultimate AEW sicko, there's like the genre of Mox, Hanger, and Swerve are...
The needle in his mouth guy.
Yeah.
Just wants an injection of love.
Yeah, an injection of love. And one more thing for me, before we move on very quickly, is I don't want to sound like a Deadlock Pro guy. No offense to Deadlock Pro.
But there's a type of guy.
But the wrestling fans who kind of like really like that, I find kind of insufferable sometimes.
Can I say this as a runner? Like, how do you know if somebody's ran a marathon? Because they'll tell you.
Yeah.
That's the case with Deadlock guys.
Yeah, indeed.
It's not against Deadlock the product.
Yeah, indeed.
And some of their very funny podcast clips.
Yes.
I watch them and I'm like, I hope if one person laughs at some of our nonsense the way that I go for some of theirs, we're doing something right.
Indeed. And you know, like, I'm sure they're fans. It's just the people who really want you to know how good it is and all the rest of it, right? But one thing that's putting me off a little bit, and yes, you could argue I'm a hypocrite because this story was told to perfection in February 2020. I've mentioned it before, right? This power of friendship stuff that we've seen in AEW since day one, right? If done very well, it's incredibly moving and amazing. And we're seeing it with Hangman and Swerve becoming friends for the greater good, and Ospreay urging this friendship on and all the rest of it. Again, I don't want to sound like one of those. What about some hatred? Some true hatred. Personal issues drawing money. With AEW in particular, and we've seen it now, and we're seeing it now. It's like the new trend where Seth Rollins needs to be the future of WWE. He's been the past and present for longer than most wrestlers had runs made. But they're tiptoeing around that idea of Seth Rollins has a vision for WWE where it's pretty boring and there's no interesting combustible guys like Punk or part-timers who are actual proper main event stars.
The
like
ones that
Roman
got you in the main
Reigns.
event.
Yeah, completely. So this idea of the promotion and the future of the outfit being the stakes, like it shouldn't be.
That's got to go.
Oh, it does.
That
It does. We've seen it with AEW, and I'm so glad that All In, which I'm really hyped for, is sold on the idea of, we're doing away with that. We are doing away with that, and you're going to pay to see it. But WWE's doing it with Seth, and they've done it with Roman, and like obviously Mox did it after. It shouldn't be an old-fashioned trope, personal issues drawing money. It should be the core fundamentals. Like, look at the most rave-reviewed, and I'm not saying this is dead entirely, because look at the most rave-reviewed, critically adored stories of modern times. CM Punk versus MJF, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. The power of friendship did inform this one, but it got heated up when they were no longer friends. Kenny Omega being such a negging dickhead to Hangman Page I got lost in this story. Like, Hangman Page go, no, you arsehole. You're an arsehole and you're a shortcut-taking bastard, and I'm going to be the rightful elite world champion. And they hated each other towards the end.
The way the books flipped first against him and then back to him.
Yeah.
We're part of that.
It is a bit power of friendshipy, and they've reconciled because that's just a device that the elite really, really like. But yeah, it shouldn't be an old-fashioned trope. It is, and I would like to see more of it back. Okay. Chris Apples. All right.
How'd you like them apples, Chris?
I like them just great.
I
like the question too. This one's more for you.
Okay.
With Liv Morgan out for months and repeatedly being a major part of Evolution 2 plans, who steps up in her place? Is it as simple as Roxanne Perez, or is there anyone new that you'd like to see giving a major push towards the event?
Well, it's part good fortune, part good storytelling, IMO, that Roxanne Perez could just drop into this storyline. We sort of speculated on this all week. Liv Morgan getting injured on that specific role was really telling, wasn't it? Because she came out at the start of the show and basically was like, EO, I want a title shot. So you had to think down the line, Liv Morgan, based on a meritocracy, if one still exists in WWE, was going to be back in the world title picture, and people would have rooted for it as well.
It does, by the way, I think.
Yeah, more than it doesn't. Yeah. And certainly in the women's division, it's easier to construct one because you tell their stories typically anyway. I think there's always time for Liv Morgan to get back to that world title picture as a babyface, potentially winning the Royal Rumble upon her return from injury, because the timeline's going to work out quite nicely for that. So that bit's squared away. The stuff right now happening within the Judgment Day, I go back and forth and have done all this week on to use her or not to use her, and I just can't make my mind up, because the idea of her, like, if they can, she's going to have her arm in a sling at a bare minimum. It might be worse. It might be the CM Punk brace. God knows what. But you remember, and there was a purpose to them doing it, even though it was mean-spirited because it was WWE. Remember when Mark Henry was on the walking frame? We see Mark Henry in real life, behind the wheels of steel with Wilborn, and he's in good nick, right? Good fell. But they put him in that walking frame to make Randy Orton's abuse of him look even worse. If they could somehow, like, make Liv Morgan's dislocated shoulder look like she can't do nothing.
Yeah.
And then Dominic Mysterio's like, yeah, I'll get that for you. He's like the least supportive boyfriend. He's the least supportive, an arsehole partner.
Gets some like slapstick gags with it.
Yeah, she still wants to come to work. She still wants to be part of the Judgment Day. She's had to surrender.
I'm really tired after this match that I cheated to win. Hold my belt and then put it on the shoulder.
On it, yeah, like the sort of, I could really do with a massage. And she's only got one good arm.
Yeah.
Like, I can't decide. Like, and then in the meantime, they've done Freebird rules. So Roxanne's winning the tag matches and like
at Evolution, by the way, because this person's interested.
Sorry,
in
Evolution.
PLE,
Short answer to a longer question: Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez versus the Bellas / Nikki and Rhea. I think that's fallen into WWE's lap, and they're telling the story to get you there.
Yeah,
and it leaves loads on the table for what if the heels win? It's like no replacement might even be better than maybe we don't need you anymore. But I can't decide what's better. Liv Morgan disappears and she gets her own Rhea Ripley return pop of Dominic. Dominic, you stupid bastard. Liv Morgan's back.
You did it again.
You stupid idiot. You did it again. Or, she's used as this figure of almost of mean-spirited fun. And like Finn's looking on, knowing that like he's, this is great. This couldn't have got injury. That's even better than my original plan. Plan B's better than plan A. There's so much fun to be had with the physical comedy and with the stuff that like that group have always done a pretty good job with. I don't know what I want more. Because the pop, if you just keep Liv Morgan off telly, it's a 2025 like Austin pop for someone like a Liv Morgan come back and get revenge on a Dominic Mysterio.
Yeah, she
at that level, you know.
She was at the place, she was already rapidly approaching the place where it becomes untenable to keep her as a heel.
Yeah.
It happens in wrestling, it's happened in wrestling so often where you're simply too good in the heel role that people just think, oh, you're class, I'm going to cheer you. I think they were still in the stage where people were happy to see her playing heel and hating her, but it was getting a little bit, I mean, she's undeniable. I never thought I'd fall for Liv Morgan. I don't think any of us did. She's going to be a running joke on this podcast. Second Hamflett-fed themed question comes from Wills Osprey, who's at, with a Z, is Wrestle Thoughts. Good afternoon, you whimsical wrestling. Well, it's too many W's, so I will not complete that. If given the pen, how would you book Sami Zayn's road to the world title? They would love to see Kevin Owens come out the night after Mania to celebrate with him, only to powerbomb him onto the apron once again.
It's all good stuff.
At a minimum, and I will answer you, I will get you, because it's your lane this. At an absolute minimum, if Sami Zayn wins a world title in WWE, at a minimum, Kevin Owens should come out.
Mm-hmm.
They have to like tease it and go, I'm only kidding. Yeah.
And like Owens' neck, we don't know physically how he's going to be for that moment, is he? Yeah, him coming out for it. Totally agree. I was of the opinion that there were conversations had been had where Sami Zayn, a bit like he did in February 2023, would be so convincing as a number one contender that you would forget all logic. Like in 2023, Elimination Chamber, Montreal, Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns, a month before Cody gets his match.
Yeah.
Enough people were fighting for Sami Zayn to win. And you couldn't believe it. And it's like, God, that's effective. Like, it's him, it's the story, it's everything. It's kind of come together. And I have become convinced that because it's Sami Zayn, they're doing it again. I was certain that the idea was going to be, you think he's going to turn heel. And in order to turn heel, he can't win the title. Like, I actually now think, scrap the heel turn, continue to tease it, never deliver it. Have Sami Zayn be the one guy who over and over again is basically handed the opportunity to do the bad thing.
And then it's not.
And doesn't.
I think that's where they're going with it.
Yeah, like, it's a bit on the nose, this, because of what they're doing with Karrion Kross. But from the night after WrestleMania all the way through to next year's WrestleMania build, you always sense the devil on Sami Zayn's shoulder. And he never listens to it. And you see so many times in which he could. I think the route one answer is he wins the Royal Rumble and he wins the world title at WrestleMania.
But
you've seen so many times in which he could take a shortcut. he could take, and WWE is sometimes a place where a Money in the Bank cash-in is the answer, or like he rejected the offer to go to SmackDown, didn't he? Heyman was like, if you leave SmackDown, I can get your title shot over there. But he stuck at it on Raw. He continues to reject the shortcuts despite all of them being placed in his path. There's going to be a time where Jey Uso's back's wide open.
Yeah.
He's got a chair in his hand.
Yeah. You're telling a massive long-term story with this dude, aren't they?
Massively.
Yeah.
And the Rumble in Saudi Arabia. I don't think we've discussed this, by the way, but it's going to lead me to the question that I'm going to ask you next. But I have a slightly conspiracy-pilled belief.
Conspiracy corner.
That's a big one.
That's like doing it.
Yeah.
It's like making dumb sounds with my mouth. That's what I'm all about. I'm the kind of guy I am. Like butter in my ass and a lollipop in my mouth. That's just the kind of guy I am.
Awful lot of sounds. Different sounds.
Different needs.
CM Punk working Night of Champions is as much an exercise in having the CM Punk conversations now so that they're not had around Royal Rumble season, when he will definitely work that one. I think it's a more damaging conversation to the reputation of Punk to be had in the Rumble space than it is in the middle of summer. And I genuinely think that's one of the reasons why he's like, I'm pulling the plaster off now. I'm definitely entering that Rumble.
Yeah.
But by then, I don't want anybody to be having the conversations that have been had around this build. Yeah. I think that's been part of the process by Punk, WWE, everybody involved. I still think Sami Zayn wins that Rumble. Sports washing requires unified babyface moments to be effective. Happiness.
Yeah.
That emotion that you tie.
The League Cup.
Well, it just erases the bad stuff, doesn't it?
Sadly,
it does. That's how
it does.
That's how the human heart and brain and balls work, right? It just erases the bad stuff. And Sami Zayn winning the Rumble is like, what would there be, 2027? Like, that's 9 years into the 10-year deal. What a time for nobody to give a toss.
Yeah.
And then the deal getting re-upped, it's going to get re-upped, is announced with a celebration of 2027. WrestleMania is there. So then you've got the WrestleMania 2026 build in Vegas, WrestleMania 42, easier, to be Sami's finally got his title shot. Yeah. Is he finally going to get it done? We all know WrestleMania 43 is in Saudi Arabia. So if WWE want to keep holding it off, they're going to hold it off for one more year and he's going to win it over there. So I say he wins the Rumble and that becomes the big tease. Yeah. And I know that's tied to sports washing stuff and it's a difficult conversation, but Sami Zayn's been one of those people that creates the like the middle in all of this, doesn't he? He's this guy that like, it's significant that he wrestles there and what he means to the fans that actually go there and love those shows. Yeah. So I think that's happening. I have a question for you, Sidge. It's a question from Travis, a.k.a. AEW1, formerly of X/Twitter, and that relates to the question. Travis messaged me on Cameo, which you can do, by the way. Michael Hamflett on Cameo. Sidge, not yet, but one day maybe?
One day maybe.
Yeah, Michael Hamflett on Cameo. You can send me a DM.
I'm just lazy.
I'll definitely reply.
A lot on.
I'll do a video message for you whenever you like. Travis messaged me on Cameo. That's right. For your questions answered podcast, and it's the first time me and you have been on, so I've been looking forward to asking you this. A niche portion of your audience are anti-fascists who've actually passed Phil Brooks' purity test of leaving Elon Musk's Twitter. Could you announce a non-X means for your morally superior fans to ask questions? I think Travis has got his tongue in his cheek there. But the truth is not really, because X has proven just this useful repository for questions. Yeah. And we are very blessed that our community is nice enough that it sort of deviates from the norm on that otherwise dreadful app. We found a few good people.
Yeah.
And they're all in our little community, and that's awesome.
A few rays of light if you look yonder.
Indeed. But Travis, this is evidence, proof if proof be need be, that if you use Cameo, I'll get your question on here, likewise to anybody else. But also, as of today, as we're recording this, fingers crossed, I think we're back on Spotify after a little bit of a snafu. Spotify have added a comments section now, which you can track. So if anybody ever wants to leave a question in the comments section of one of these podcasts, I'll have a little scoop ski before we record the next one.
We need the proof.
Leave a comment, leave a question in the comment section of a Q&A podcast, and I'll have a look before we record the next one, and I'll see if there's any that I can bring to the table.
The table. Get the table.
That's French. So,
indeed, we've got 3 more questions left. The first comes from a man with pretty dismal tastes in podcasts, I'm afraid. It's Brian, the SmackDown Photoshop guy.
Oh, he listens to the best one of the week.
Yeah. And he says, I know I usually ask silly questions, but the International belt was kind of the open challenge workhorse belt. The Continental was awarded at the end of the C2. What happens with the Unified belt? Or more importantly, what do you think the stakes of the C2 will be? I actually said, right, the Owen this year was so awesome that now changed my mind, and it is genuinely lovely to honor Owen Hart and genuinely be like a reputable enough organization that you can like convince the Owen Hart Foundation that you're sort of good enough to represent that legacy. And in the build All In this year, part of which, a huge component of which was the Owen Hart Cup, has rubbished my idea of you could do a world classic. You could do a world classic G1. None of this, the very best upper mid-carders, and, you know, I love him, but a Mark Briscoe who's just permanently in that mid-card 50-50, you know. Do the C2. No, I wanted the world classic to be Swerve, Kenny, Mox, Hangman, MJF, Ospreay, you know, like the creme de la creme, and just do your G1. Come on. The hell are we waiting for? I like the Own. I do like the Own now a great deal. So maybe not. Basically, you could just simply change the name and do the Unified Classic.
Yeah.
Do the Unified Classic. Make a huge deal. And the thing is as well, this will allow you to, because Tony Khan doesn't want to do the G1 because he's increasingly less resistant to doing rematches. Like he really is. That was it. Even in the golden era, that was one of the few things we were like, don't get stingy. I'm sure this Dynamite will be very loud and there'll be some cool angles and promos and awesome moments, but I know who's winning every single match, and some of these matches don't seem big. But that was kind of the luxury of, we're hot, we can kind of do anything. We're hot, we can do CM Punk versus QT Marshall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The alternative, if he's absolutely adamant, and he seems to be that he doesn't want to do a G1 proper, where there's clean losses, tough titties, someone has to job mathematically.
Yeah.
This is how it goes. If you do the Unified Classic and you continue the idea of the international title, because who cares about the Continental? Really, who cares about it? Who cares?
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. If you do it, if you keep that international element, which I've really quite enjoyed, is this little detail that they've done on TV, like the international four-way with like Mexico's Dorada, Switzerland's Claudio, America's Brody King, and Canada's Kenny Omega. Like, do a proper international field where, you know, you've got representing Japan in the Unified Classic, same time of the year. Representing Canada, you've got Kenny Omega. Representing Japan is Konosuke Takeshita. Representing Japan is Okada for a potential rematch. Representing Mexico is Mystico, you know. If you want to do the C2 again, just rebrand it as the Unified Classic with a real international complexion to that field. And that's the stakes. And look, that's the Unified belt should continue in the lineage of the international, not the Continental. It's never meant a damn thing. And I've always referred to it as the star rating inflation international title, where, yes, the Intercontinental, the star rating inflation version of the Intercontinental title, in that, in the Fed of yore, the Intercontinental title would be your good workers and your good matches, and then you had the megastar, charismatic, less great workers in your main event. Trickier than ever to pull off in this work rate, like, extravaganza era that we're in, and AEW leans in on. But if you can do the literally the best matches, like the Omega matches, the Ospreay matches, he was involved in it a lot last year, it can still work, and I would keep it in that lineage. You don't care, do you? So I can move on to the last two questions.
Well, I agree, but I would say, is it really that bad if it's a Revolution world title shot and you call it the Championship Classic, and that's the C2? Like, we've got in WWE at the moment quite a successful king.
It is, because you can't do a G1. It takes a shine off All In. They've worked so hard to establish All In as this is the annual tentpole event.
Yeah.
If you do a G1 before Revolution, I don't think it works.
Like, rather than a 16.
I think you undermine what we're trying to achieve with All In.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm getting paid as a consultant. But throwing back to, like, you're
not getting paid, but they've used my ideas.
That's why I don't need to pay you. Giving away for free on here. Yeah, SummerSlam's got the King of the Ring now, which is kind of how it used to work at its best in the early 90s and mid-90s. The Rumble has always had WrestleMania to feed into. I don't think... See, if rankings were around, God, what a time. Because you could have like
I've settled on unworkable, sadly.
But you could have like a breakout group in the C2 rather than it being the top field that enter the Owen. You could have like all the little guys getting a chance. And that's your route. It's going to be, I know it's a C2 and it's really hard, but it's actually a quicker route to the title than if you're going to have to work your way up. And someone like a Fletcher that we were talking about, that's how he gets his title shot. But yeah, you're probably right. It's going to undermine the All In thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is good. They've got something there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want some more thoughts on how they can make All In truly feel the scale of WrestleMania, if you somehow missed it, do check out the Dynamite review for that. 2 more questions, the first of which comes from the Welsh Trickster. My little brother's favorite wrestler is Seth Rollins. How do I help him see the error of his ways? Don't.
Yeah.
Every person needs this somewhat embarrassing, which being a Seth Rollins mega fan is embarrassing, formative experience that will teach them the lesson of, I don't know everything. You need to be humbled throughout your youth. Sure, I mean, it's a bonding exercise. You know what you could do is say, I know, what do you like about Seth Rollins? Oh, like the exciting, flashy offense. Yeah. Stuff, yeah. Oh, you like some of his moves? Yeah. Here's Kenny Omega.
You could show him the 3-match series with Cody Rhodes and just see if he pivots to Cody instead, because he'll, like, in the experience of my youngest son, it will just be like magnetized by a much bigger star.
Yeah.
He's like, Seth had some great matches with this guy. He's that guy. And then all of a sudden you've jumped.
I got a facetious opinion on this. You could show him Kenny, the better version of what Seth Rollins could never aspire to be, or let him have it.
Yeah.
Because it's important to think at one point you know everything and then realize, that was embarrassing in my past. I don't know everything. Because the next time you think you know something, you'll think, no, I don't. Honestly, reaching 40 is everything people said it would be.
It's good, isn't it?
It's good.
I like it.
It's liberating. You become less pretentious. You become less self-conscious. You need these experiences in life.
And dig into what it is that he loves about Seth Rollins, because I have a good feeling.
There's nothing, though. It's some dumb kid.
Nah, man.
Yeah, it's some dumb kid who doesn't know what he's talking about.
This is the point, though, did you see? Because it can't possibly be the rest of another star power. So the little brother might just like really like sort of Seth Rollins' aesthetics, and they're awesome. Like, he might really like...
Better when there's substance behind the style, one might see.
I don't know. I needed to find my Bret Hart after my Ultimate Warrior. All I'm saying is there's somebody next.
Yeah, but Warrior had presence and charisma.
And really bright colours and cool...
Yeah, but presence and charisma, of which Seth Rollins has none. I get it. You
get my life.
He is the de facto top star of your beloved show that you're not quite willing to admit is not very good anymore.
I'm speaking on behalf of the little brother here. He's in the bright colours, right? He's kind of, if anything, Seth Rollins is kind of the little brother of Kenny Omega, isn't he? This fits. Like, find out what it is that he loves about Seth Rollins, and then
just some little know nothing kid, though. If you like Seth Rollins,
and then look around.
I'm joking.
And see what other wrestlers mirror those things, because he probably will say, I love his awesome big coats that he wears, and I like singing his theme, and those are really cool things, by the way.
Introducing to pop music.
So find
if they like singing songs,
other wrestlers that you like that do things similar.
Pop music's all about that.
And then he's like,
pop music and fashion. Kenny Omega, problem solved.
Be the human Spotify algorithm thing where it says you might also like. Be that for him, and all you'll do is open his mind up and be like, who's just as good as Seth Rollins secretly, really loads better, is X. And because I don't think it's going to be Kenny Omega. I don't think a little brother is going to look at Kenny Omega and be like, oh yeah, now I realize Seth Rollins is a bad worker. I think it's somebody with like even flashy, Bianca Belair, even flashier gear, even more it's like cooler music, and
far better,
big main stage presence,
far better at WrestleMania. 2
triple threats at WrestleMania that you can use as a like for like. And then all of a sudden he's a Bianca Belair guy, and you're like, well, there you go. You've just taken an enormous leap forward in somebody's abilities, top trumps ratings across the board.
Indeed.
But yeah, like, I'd be fascinated to why a kid has gravitated towards Seth Rollins. Mine going for Cody Rhodes makes all the sense in the world to me. The top star is doing his job.
Yeah.
But like, I love it when
some people like Seth.
People pick mid-carders. Every wrestler ever who's wrestled on TV has got like a super fan.
Yeah.
which I love. It's so fascinating, isn't it?
I mean,
Like,
Jannetty could, like, Seth Rollins could not lace the guy's boots, but I gravitate towards Marty Jannetty.
that's it. There are mid-carders. And
Who was yours? Because Warrior was your guy. Was it Brett straight away for you?
I was a big Brett guy, yeah.
Even in the Hart Foundation?
Yeah, well, I love the Hart Foundation.
Yeah.
Love them. I was trying to think there or there.
See, mine went from Hogan, Jannetty, Brett, but you went Warrior, Brett.
I'll tell you what I did like. Was the old Texas Tornado.
Yeah, I did like him.
That made a lot of sense to me. Looked a bit like Warrior. Oh, he's the IC champion. So he's the second champion. So the top champion is Warrior.
Yeah.
So everything is neat and tidy. And the Hearts were the title. Sometime night, you meant something to me, man.
Yeah.
All the titles were rightals. That's what we've always said.
That's how everyone
They were. They're fucking worsage. Warrior, Texas, Hearts. All the titles were rightals. SummerSlam 90.
Chris Chopping concludes our questions today on a pretty depressing note.
Oh, no.
Chris Chopping says, Shayna Baszler, Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa are the 4 people who got me back into wrestling. Oh, dear. Is there any reason to be optimistic for the wrestling futures of any of them now? Look, I'll give you my upfront answer because you've asked both of us, but I think Hamflett might have a more positive spin. Spin Dr. Fed. That's what he does on the Raw review all the time. God. Shayna Baszler, I can foresee a time when she does enough really cool stuff for Bloodsport where she gets like some cult raves and stuff, you know? Maybe gets a little AEW run, you know? Who knows? Personally, I think she's got a one-dimensional style, but at the same time, why would you deviate from that if you're Shayna Baszler? Because that's your credential, you're legitimate. I don't know, but maybe. A lot of what she wanted to do got like completely knocked out of her by Vince, who basically apparently she did a Raw match, and Vince was like, no, and then she went to drop down leapfrog school with Natalya. I think Shayna's been open about this. So maybe she could rediscover that true distinctive style that she had elsewhere. Who knows? Adam Cole needs to go to the Fed pronto. And the thing with Adam Cole that's so devastating for him is that his entire gimmick, his entire persona, his entire essence is, I'm hot, I'm over, I'm moreover when I command you to say boom, I am the cock of the walk. There's not a single wrestler in terms of persona that I can think has had such catastrophic damage done to it by a real life wobble in confidence and like a bad injury record.
Before the word was overused, he was aura. The gimmick was aura.
His gimmick was aura.
And that's fine.
And when you've got no aura, you can't do it.
Yeah.
He needs a complete reinvention or a different company. He is dead in the water in AEW, I'm afraid. As for DIY, I described, and I don't even think I'm being that hyperbolic, right? I described One Final Beat as like it was closer to drinking cement than watching a professional wrestling match because it was so overwrought, so laughable, so pretentious, so serious that by the time it was done, I was legitimately full of hardened cement. I couldn't stand anything they did. The odd Ciampa match thereafter, the way that was only working because it was so completely different to Gargano, super technical wrestler who takes himself very seriously. To this day, I think the people who love Deadlock Pro now loved TakeOver New Orleans then.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that was universally regarded as one of the all-time great series as it was happening. I don't think a single program, if you look through the annals of pro wrestling history, like Flair Steamboat, Misawa Kobashi, Misawa Kawada, Omega Okada Tanahashi. Like, I'm not being funny. I know it's impossible to believe it now or to recall it now. In 2018, people thought you were watching one of them play out in front of you.
If we did Best Match Ever, Johnny Gargano, we'd get to Adam Cole in New York and Andrade before we got to any of the champions.
And I wouldn't do either because...
I wouldn't necessarily, but you know what I mean?
It was so excessive and it's dated so badly that I just think now it's... The problem they have, DIY, together and separately, is that the people who loved it then have kind of moved on stylistically. It was hard. It was so cloying and there was so much of it. I think the people who liked it then are still full. They are still full all these years later. Marry that with the idea of the audience they perform in front of. Never really cared for that. It's a new cinema-focused audience who doesn't... That one ladder match is a rule-proving exception to my theory that everyone's full. Because they've been in that main roster system that doesn't really encourage thought or proper violence and struggle and the things that proper wrestling fans gravitate towards. I think they've been dulled mentally. It happens in the WWE system. It happened with Ricochet for a few months. Maybe they'll have the Ricochet. And I don't want to be too hard and firm on, oh, they'll never get over ever again. Because I kind of thought the same thing about Ricochet, and he's been a revelation in AEW. So I'm not saying it's the end for Gargano and Ciampa, but what works against them, other than everyone's full, the audience that they perform in front of presently doesn't care about this wrestling they do, that ladder match on SmackDown aside. The other thing is that the thing at which they predominantly excel at is boring. Great matches, who cares? Like, they have got a... If they're ever over again at the level they were in 2018, it would legitimately be almost as shocking as seeing CM Punk return to WWE. I just can't ever see it. How much Ricochet, so who the hell knows?
Well, Shayna Baszler, Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, and Tommaso Ciampa. It's safe to assume then, Chris, I'm going to guess that 2017 to 2018 was where these wrestlers found you and you found wrestling again. And to Sidgwick's point, at the time, you could scarcely believe how much they were able to seemingly move things forward on a takeover by takeover basis in that period, 2017 to 2018. The short answer to your question, is there any reason to be optimistic for the wrestling futures of any of them now, is no. But I don't want that to be such like a kick in the gut. Sidgwick's identified individually why that might not be the case. But consider this, 7 or 8 years is ages, and that's real, and that's okay for you to not be optimistic about the futures, because it was okay that you lived through the peak, and there'll be new wrestlers that are still finding their peak, and you might find them, and you might just have to enjoy watching those old moments and remembering them. We lost Brett in the year 2000, knowing that there was more road to travel, but it was okay because once you kind of come to terms with that, you've got everything that he did, rather than thinking, I'm never going to get Brett again. 7 or 8 years ago is the exact same time frame of the Omega-Okada series, and Sidge has at times not been super optimistic about that match.
No, I'm scared.
That is the reality of the passage of time, and we're talking about the greatest series of matches ever, you know? And I just think that's like, I don't want that. I don't want the no to be, so screw off. It can be a realistic no of, no, but your good times were as good as you remember them. Like, I'm saying this, my example of this thing is Bayley. Like, I just don't think I'm ever going to feel how I truly want to about a Bayley match ever again. But I wasn't like that in 2020. Get in. She's found a version of WWE that she's actually made hers. This is, I never saw this coming, and I got that in Pandemic Bayley. And it was nice, and like, that itself is 5 years ago. Brooklyn, 10 years ago now. It was just a thing that was there, and now it's gone. So, Chris, no, you probably shouldn't be optimistic about any of them, but that's fine.
It's fine.
It is fine. Like, it is okay.
I'm going to be uncharacteristically, I mean, I rate this guy, who I'm going to cite as an example, far more than any of the names listed here, right? But on the other side, never say never, shocking returns in form, and like the companies that they work for undergoing drastic creative changes and improvements and whatever. 2018, which Hamflett has correctly identified as the year that you probably were massively probably into your pro wrestling all over again. Baszler on top of the world, Cole on top of the world, Gargano on top of the world, Tommaso Ciampa on top of the world. 2018, Kevin Owens, you thought he'd never do anything good again in his life.
Yeah, good point.
Ever. Was that the Strowman year?
Yeah, blue toilet water
2018.
in his face. Yeah,
You saw he's
getting
finished.
bullied on TV and pay-per-view every week.
Aura's gone, completely dead. The brawls aren't even that entertaining. The creative is wretched. He himself looks like he's had the best matches he's ever going to work in his life. Many of them were in PWG, Ring of Honor, and a few of them were on the main roster. A couple, if that. It's a shame how it's worked out, but that's what you get when you sign up for Vince at the end of the day. Now, He had the Renaissance of all Renaissances. He's headlined WrestleMania twice. He's part of he's going to be one of the
He'd walk back into a main event.
He'd walk back into the main event. His face when they do, like, if they ever did a physical media version of the Levesque era, like they do with the Attitude era, like Kevin's face is just behind Cody, doing amazing stuff. So you never know.
Mm-hmm.
Never say never in this silly little business of ours. Thank you very much for joining us today and submitting your questions. If we didn't get round to yours, we will endeavor to get you next time. In the meantime, if you're unlike after one final beat, I'm still a bit nibbly, I'm still a bit peckish, I could go for another podcast. Well, guess what? You're in luck, buddy, because if you like self-indulgent servings of podcasts, the SmackDown preview is available, or should be available, in your feeds right now.
It's a good one.
And there's also Wrestle Culture in and around right now. But in the meantime, if you want to catch those all the time without me prompting you, subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Thank you very much to Michael Hamflett for joining us today. Thank you very much for listening, and we